Hello everyone, my name is Marina Lantos and I am one of the core team members for East Coast Salon Services. And today's haircut is going to be a razor pixie. Okay, so the first major section that we're going to be working with is going to be the back of the head, just above the O bone to the top of the ear. This is the area that we're going to set the shape in to make it a bit more head hugging. We're going for a short textured look. That's why we're choosing to use a feather razor. I'm going to take my first section right directly in the center of the back of the head, vertical section. When we're working with a razor, you always want to work with section that's going to be thick enough that we have control of the hair, but thin enough that we can cut it at still a precise end. I'm going to elevate the hair, if this is parallel to the floor, to just below, and cut a shape that's going to be revealing the head shape, so short enough to have the shape follow the head shape. Whatever the shape that I'm creating on top of the section, I want to make sure that I continue that cutting line all the way down into the bottom hairline. So the cutting line that I just created is a little bit shorter on the bottom and a little bit longer on the top. That's going to give a little bit more volume up here and much more head hugging towards the bottom. Next section, parallel to the previous, same elevation, and now we're going to over direct the section into the previous. Find your guide in front of your fingers, slide your fingers so that you could see your guide in front. Get your fingers to mimic what your section before was doing, right? So your cutting line and your fingers are going to mimic how you held your fingers for the previous section. Now let's talk about the stroke of the blade. There is a technique that's called open stroke or a closed stroke. When we're talking about a closed stroke, we're talking about how little amount of movement we're creating with the razor. So if I go up and down or in and out with the razor, I'm going to keep it more open. If I keep the blade almost stationary, I'm going to keep the end result much more blunt, and we'll call that a closed blade. How open and how closed you want to keep your blade will always depend on your end result, the density of the hair, and the natural texture. The more curlier the hair and the wavier the hair, the more closed you want to keep your stroke, because you're going to remove a lot of weight from the hair. And if you're removing a lot of weight, that curl might get tighter. Now, sometimes you want that to happen, right? So that's why we always say, depending on your end result. If you want your client's wavy hair to be curlier, you want to remove a lot of weight from the hair. If someone has wavy hair and want it to be as smooth and as straight as possible, you don't want to remove the weight, and you want to keep your blade a little bit more on the closed side. So with each section, I'm either moving myself or I'm spinning the tripod to make sure that my over direction is just into the previous. So which means the length that I'm working with, the length of the new section, is only a tiny bit longer than the section before. Now if I start accidentally over directing hair too far into the back of the head, too far into the center, I'm going to end up creating more length. Or if I accidentally over direct the hair towards the ear, then I'm going to get shorter. So not necessarily one way is going to be a wrong way, it's just going to give us a different end result. So continue following the cutting line underneath or behind my fingers. Always make sure that you're seeing the section that you need to cut. Keep your sections very clean. The cleaner the work, the cleaner the end result, and then better the haircut is going to last. Now my sections are parallel to each other, and I am doing exactly the same motion for every section. So my elevation stays the same, my over direction stays the same, and my cutting line is exactly the same. Now, if you want to leave someone's hairline a little bit on the softer side, whether they have cowlicks or they just prefer it to be a little bit more fringy, you can create a little more movement on your underneath by twisting your fingers farther away. You guys see how I left this piece a little bit longer? And that's going to give me a little bit more softness right in this area in here. So I'm going to do the same thing on my last section. I kind of keep this as my security blanket because the hairline goes up, which means I'm going to create a hole exposing the natural hairline. If I don't like it, I could always cut it off. But once you cut it off, right, once you don't have that area to play with, you have what you have. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Before I do that, I'm going to tilt my client's head down towards the opposite side that I'm working on and lower the tripod. Right, the next major section that we're going to be working on is above the round of the head. I'm going to take a diagonal section that's going to mirror the underneath sectioning. Clip that out of the way. I'm going to stand directly behind my section. I'm going to find the longest piece coming from underneath and cut just a tiny bit longer than that. So I want to use the guide underneath as my shortest pieces and then just go gradually longer than that. So I'm going to have you raise the camera just so that we can see a little bit better. So here's my guide. You guys can see it right in front of my fingers. I'm going to slide my fingers just a tiny bit past the guide. Now where I'm keeping my blade open is connecting to the guide underneath. And then I'm sliding the razor just past that guide to create slight disconnection. Now with each section or subsection, I'm going to continue moving so to make sure that I'm creating a shape that's mimicking the shape that we have underneath. All right, I'm going to take the next section and repeat exactly what I did underneath. Clip that out of the way. Lift each section just a tiny bit higher. Find the guide right in front of the fingers. And then using the same guide as we just created and creating the serrated edge, but keeping our blade open. Making sure that I'm constantly moving around the head so the shape that I'm creating is going to be about the same length. I'm going to continue going exactly the same way all the way to the top of the head. And the last part on this side is we're going to connect it to the front hairline piece that we had disconnected. I'm going to take a vertical section. I'm going to bring out my fingers parallel to the floor, and then just go right in and then create a little bit of looseness within that section. Next section, another vertical section, stationary guide. I'm going to bring this hair parallel to the floor once again. Cut off whatever the long hair that's reaching, and then create a little bit of looseness right within this section. So when I'm creating looseness, I'm putting just the front of the blade into the hair, and then going really soft little strokes until I remove enough weight from the hair until I'm happy. Again, stationary guide. Bring this hair just slightly back into this previous section. Whatever is the length that is past my guide, I'm going to remove that. And then go right in and create a little bit of softness and looseness. And the last section, I'm going to skim off this length just to make it a little bit more flattering. I'm using the front piece as a guide, and then the hair that sits right on top of the ear. I'm going to collect it gently, place my fingers to go slight diagonal, and then very open blade, but barely any tension. I want to be really gentle with the amount of length that I'm taking off, because I want the end result to be really soft. Now when this falls, I'm going to make sure that it's following the face shape. So I'm going to take this a little tiny bit shorter. It has a natural fall, natural softness. Okay, that looks great. Okay, now we can do the other side. Now that the haircut is done, let's do a little bit of styling. I'm going to use a Hair Resort Beach Texturizer, and that's to create a little bit of a natural wave in the hair. So only a little tiny bit goes a long way, only really just a quarter size. I'm going to emulsify it in my hands first, and then evenly apply it to all of the hair. As I'm working through the hair, I want to make sure that I'm scrunching it and kind of placing it in place how I would like to see her hairstyle. The beauty of a razor haircut is because it removes weight from the hair, we're kind of emphasizing the curl pattern in the hair. So a client who has barely any wave can style the hair curly now, and the client who has curly hair can make the hair much, much fuller. So you can either air dry this or you can diffuse it.